Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Shadow Tech Goddess, Part 2, Chapter 11, The Garden of Horrors, and this is the final chapter in Part 2, The Loves of Paymaster Stenstrom. After this, we proceed to Part 3, and at the end of the video, I will reveal the name of Part 3. I'm not going to do it right now. I have to wait until the end of the show. Last chapter, Paymaster Stenstrom and his stalwart band of compachos aboard the fighting ship Seeker were well on their way in the wilds of space to Ing. Trip was going well. Some of his fears were allayed that the crew was holding up. He gave them extra rations of grog and things like that. Allowed them to get their rocks off, I guess, and everybody's good. Along the way, they're not finding a whole lot, just a lot of empty systems, empty space. When they do find a star system, it's just full of gas giants and other very inhospitable planets. No green worlds. That's always what you're looking for, with the green worlds where you can put down, get a rest, stretch your legs a little bit, and maybe hunt up some game if you need some, and then move on when you're ready. Sort of like a short vacation, but they're not finding much of that. And there's this crazy world of Punt, which was supposed to be about halfway on their trip. They couldn't find it. It wasn't there, but they were finding traces of Shadow Tech. Tara offers the thought that maybe Punt is a planar world where the planar worlds tend to disappear. They're not where you expect them to be, and then they show back up again later. So right now Punt is missing in action. In other books we actually arrive at Punt, and it's kind of sucks. It sucks. While getting a briefing from Lady Gwendolyn and Tara, Stenstrom began to feel a little sicky, a little queasy in the tummy, a little kind of dizzy. He starts hearing voices, and eventually he goes down with a sickness known as Gift Val, and it's a sickness of the mind due to stellar mach. And stellar mach is like my version of warp speed. It's where a ship, you wind up the stellar mach coils, the ship starts moving so fast it kind of blinks out of reality for a moment and then reappears once you come out of stellar mach, and they only can use it for a few minutes at a time. But in doing that, you cut a centennial voyage, which is what this is known, one that will last a long time, from thousands of years down to just a few weeks. But stellar mach can be very deleterious to your health, especially your mind. And all these people, these gifted people in my world, their brains can suffer from stellar mach. Now Stenstrom, who doesn't really have gifts, like Captain Dabbage, his friend and mentor, has lots of gifts. His son, Lord Cable, has lots of gifts. Being a Tyrol, he really didn't have any. But he has Tyrol sorcery, but that's something he learned. It's not a inherited gift of the mind. But still, he went down with Gift Val, and he ended up in the fringes of the Hall of Mirrors, in the Hall of Mundane. And in that hall, he sees a long table, and there's all these women sitting there. And he's like, what is this? What the fuck is this? Who are these women? I do not know. A woman approaches him, wearing a funky little suit with a little cape and a little helmet, and claims to be the Shadow Tech Goddess. Now, if you've read or listened to Cat, you know exactly who this person is. And I'm not going to go through it now. See Cat for more. She tells him she's the Shadow Tech Goddess. He says, who the fuck are all these women at this table? And she says, well, these are the Covis, who are extraplanar entities. The Covis, we're gonna get a heavy dose of extraplanar entities today in this chapter, and we'll find out who or what the Covis are. But they're all Covis, lots of women. There are lots and lots of different versions of Paymaster Stenstrom. He looks at these people, doesn't know who they are. It's just, well, you can't know them all, but some aspects of you know these people, but apparently not. He didn't see anyone he knows. And she says, come on, I'll show you something cool. And he takes her hand. She leads him out into a photo-negative sunshine. And that's where we end. So today, the Garden of Horrors, we're going to get a crash course in extraplanar entities, or EVPs as they're known. I just love a good session of EVPs. So, let us proceed, shall we? Part 2, Chapter 11, The Garden of Horrors. They exited the hall to a bright, harshly colorful garden. The Shadow Tech Goddess ebon costume glistened in the light. She led him down a cobbled path. To his left, he saw a steep cliff trail down to a distant beach. Hints of white stone structures huddled against the shoreline. Black water lapped against the sand. The sky was a harsh, oversaturated grayish white. Shadow Tech. He could smell it in the air. What do you want? He asked as they walked. I don't know what you mean, she replied happily. What do you want? You've brought me here, you've shown me all this. You must want something. And for the record, I don't believe you are the Shadow Tech Goddess as you claim. Why not? Somehow, I don't think the real one would be so conversational. I've been worshipped here for ages. Then I believe your worshippers are deluded. She laughed a little. Because I like you, I'll allow that remark to pass. So my question stands. What do you want? She didn't address his question. She led him farther down the path. At last, they reached a curved stone fence and a black iron gate. Here we are. This is what I've wanted to show you. She opened the gate and swung the door out. Go ahead. Please enter. Through the gate was a vast, walled-in courtyard. It appeared to once have been a lavish garden landscaped in potted, semicircular boulevards and with trees, hedges, and flowering plants. All the flora in the courtyard was withered and dormant, rattling dead leaves racing in the breeze. In the center of the courtyard was a dry fountain. Two giant-sized figures stood in its center. The Shadow Tech Goddess breathed in deep and took in the desolate scene. This is what I call my Garden of Horrors. Garden of Horrors. Stenstrom took a step in, and the garden came to life around him, seemingly drawing energy from his presence. Leaves sprouted and flowers bloomed. Plump fruits appeared on the trees, and hedges turned dark green. Spots of rich color reached up from the ground. A gaggle of scents from fresh flowers, pine needles, citrus, and new growth plowed into his nose. The fountain, too, came to life, gurgling black water. See how my garden blooms in your presence, the Shadow Tech Goddess said, admiring the scene. Have you ever stopped to wonder why things happen to you, Lord Belmont? Like my garden celebrating your rival in leaf and flower. Why do things happen in your presence? Why are people so drawn to you? Do you know? I don't know what you mean. She smiled and pinched his cheek. Ah, so modest. Is it false modesty, I wonder? You know exactly what I'm talking about. All the ladies you've attracted in your young life, and not simply attracted as a passing fancy, but who have become devoted to you one way or the other. Look at the sisters. Look at your loyal friends. Look at your various enemies. They are drawn to you too. Why? Must be because I have money, he replied. She laughed. Money, really? There is indeed something very special about you. You appear in every universe, node, and alternate reality to be found. That is unheard of. Most everyone, myself included, do not appear in all the realms. Most everyone else has to content themselves with a few appearances, say 20 to 30% at a time. There is a formula that determines how many universes a given person appears in, and that applies to the gods as well. But you defy the formula. In every reality one cares to examine, there you are. There is a name for your special condition. Kadar Gemain. the one who is everywhere. To the Kadar Domain comes the favor of the universe and the reward of power. Look at the power you possess. You have yet to properly appreciate it. People are drawn to you because of it, even though they might not be aware of why they feel the way they do. Their feelings might not always be positive, but they are there just the same, and they are always passionate. Congratulations, sir. You are an extraplanar entity. Surprise! Stenstrom thought to protest, but something told him she was right, that she was telling him the truth. She might be lying about her identity, but her information rang true. He gripped her hand tighter, taking comfort in it. They strolled through the elaborate twists and turns of the garden. Stenstrom found himself enjoying the colors and textures of the place, and he found the company surprisingly pleasing as well. This woman, pretending to be the Shadowtech goddess, was quite charming. They approached the fountain in the center of the garden and inspected it. Standing there at an elongated height was a man and a woman. They were slender and elegant, of fine features. He didn't recognize the man, but he recognized the woman instantly. "Queen Wendell Knight," he cried. "I know her." "Indeed, and this is her husband, a man with many names whom I refer to as Fiddler Crow. They are folk of Camera." "The gods of Camera?" "If you like." Fiddler Crow is an accomplished craftsman in the rare art of creating anatameters, and Queen Wendell Knight has a mastery over time. As a side note, her lore states that she is in dire need of rescue. Rescue? Yes, from a terrible entity. Perhaps you are the one who rescues her. Queen Wendell Knight's words came to him. "When you came to rescue me." He tried to stay focused. "You call this place the Garden of Horrors. It seems misnamed. I find it rather lovely." "Why do you call it that?" "Because you are surrounded by horrors even now. Check the garden, peer into the foliage, and you'll see why." They wandered about. He approached a thick, dark green hedge, speckled with red berries, and moved the foliage aside. Deep within the growing mass of the hedge was a carved figure. He pushed branches aside and uncovered it, smelling the woodsy scents of sap and hedge needles. Standing there carved in perfect rock was Gwendolyn, wearing her fleet uniform, her hat in her hands. "What is an image of Gwendolyn doing here?" "Because she is a horror of sorts. This woman is an extraplanar entity known as a Murthig. She appears at your side most often, more than all the rest. Gwendolyn is no monster." "No, I didn't say she was. The Murthig draws a great deal of power from you that manifests in various ways, hence her status as a Murthig." "It's rubbish." "Does your Gwendolyn exhibit any unusual abilities? Can she do things other people can't do?" "She is a powerful telepath." "Really?" "Actually, she's not. Were she not a Murthig, she would simply be another person about the League with ordinary skills. That amazing telepathy she has is because of her association with you. She possibly has latent skills. However, her dealings with you across the realms fuel her telepathy to much greater levels. Her whole family has it. She had it long before she met me. Time, as we see with Queen Wendell Knight, is not entirely linear, sir, is it? She is at your side in many places, and not all at once. There could have been a version of her with you when she herself was merely a little girl, or for that matter, before she was born. Given that, even if she hasn't met you or is far away, her frequent place at your side in the various universal realms gives her both and her family power. They benefit by proximity. That is the hallmark of the Murthig. It is a completely symbiotic relationship. You benefit from her presence as much as she benefits from yours. Hers is a standing of privilege, a place of power. Many beings contend heatedly to be a Murthig. What beings? More extraplanars. Keep looking. See for yourself. Stenstrom stepped away, and Gwendolyn's statue disappeared behind the hedge. Moving to another area of the garden, he spied a figure seated amid a growth of well-tended roses. It was a statue of a woman with long hair. She seemed quite large, much larger than Gwen, especially in the legs, hands, and feet, but she sat in a less proud, less confident manner, with her eyes slightly downcast. "Who is this?" he asked. "This woman is a Merton. A Merton is almost a Murthig, but not quite, and their fate is usually not pleasant. The universe speaks through a Merton, encoding messages in their flesh that can be read, usually by killing them." A message in her flesh. "Melazar?" he whispered in wonder. "Is this Melazar of Caroline?" "Probably. You may pursue a Merton if you wish, but be prepared for a great deal of hard work keeping her alive. Come, there is more to see." In a far corner of the garden, hidden behind a stand of trees on a shallow hill, was yet another statue. It was a tall female who gazed out over the whole of the garden and beyond. She wore a suit of some kind, like a pilot's suit, complete with straps and hoses to connect a life support system. There was a holster with a gun carved near her shoulder. She seemed so familiar, it was maddening. "Who is this?" he asked, eager for the answer. The Shadowtech goddess put her hands on her hips. She seemed slightly perturbed. "One who has no place." "What does that mean?" "It means she has no place in the universe and is not worthy of further thought. There isn't even a name for a creature like this. Your time is not unlimited here. Move on." Stenstrom was adamant. "But..." The Shadowtech goddess pulled him away. "Come, there is more to see." Down the hill next to an orange tree was a statue carved in a sitting position on the ground, and another in the tree branches, crouched on all fours. He recognized the statues from a distance. Tara here too? And Kat as well? "These are the Covis," the Shadowtech goddess said. "Covis are random events the universe throws your way, oftentimes during transverses in universal flow, or when there is no Murthig. Covis can help reinvigorate patterns of force. I consider them a good thing to have happen every once in a while. A nice change of pace. The table in the hall is full of Covis." Near the wall was a patch of bizarre plants stuck in the ground in all manner of confusion. The plants resembled distorted people. They had husk-like arms and legs, shoulders, and bloated heads. "What are these?" he asked. "Punts. These are punts. These people have lived in the fallout of a Shadowtech vent for centuries, and look what it has done to them. They have become not quite human. See for yourself." Stenstrom inspected one of the punts. Its skin was dry and crinkly, like a corn husk. With minimal effort, the covering of skin came away, revealing a dark and utterly alien skeleton underneath, brimming with odd wheel-like organs, extra parts, and a predatory alien head. They seemed to be composed entirely of Shadowtech. You and your lady friends will be encountering them at some point, I'm certain, as they are avid followers of mine, always wanting this and that. When you do, be on your guard. She led him away from the punts and down a boulevard of flowering ivy. "Be careful. There is a dangerous entity in this area just ahead." They passed under a cluster of hemlock trees where another statue lay half hidden. He couldn't make out what it was. It didn't seem to have a human shape. "Please excuse me," she said, and made her way deep into the trees to the statue. A fog blew up around her, obscuring the statue. 2 points of white light appeared in the fog, floating like a pair of eyes, followed by an ominous clacking sound like the pair of scissors opening and closing. Clack, clack, clack. He thought back. Melazar had mentioned something similar aboard the ship. A fog with white lights, and that something within the fog had attacked her. The Shadowtech goddess emerged from the fog a moment later and took his hand. "I'm sorry. Please, this way. Please." She led him away. With her free hand, she adjusted her helmet and toyed with her face, as if she had been weeping. "What was that, ma'am?" "A demon," she abruptly said, wiping away tears. "Please, this way." They reached a section of curved ivy. "Here we are," she said. Stenstrom stepped up and reached into the ivy, pushing it aside, uncovering a menacing set of iron bars covering a dark, hollow space. "Are you certain you wish to see? There is a reason why the creature residing within is behind a locked gate." He leaned in. "This cell is something very dangerous, something you should deal with very carefully. As you are the Kadar Gamain, the one who is everywhere, there is also one called the Tempus Findal, the one and only. The Tempus Findal appears in only one realm, and they, on a subconscious level, fret for their existence, feeling their aloneness in the multiverse. The Tempest Fendal usually doesn't start that way. Oftentimes, they face a mass extinction across the realms, and they all die out in a common seminal event, except for one and one alone, and the one remaining soul becomes a planar creature of extraordinary power. They can only die in the spot and manner in which all the others died. Thus, they are essentially immortal. This person, craving the power you command, will be drawn to you, cannot resist being near you. Wherever you go, it will follow, hoping to sink its hooks into your soul. No prison can hold it for long. The Hall of Mirrors and the anatometer meant to prevent planar passage are ineffective against it. The Tempest Findal may go wherever it wishes. It feeds off your energy. It will replace those around you whom you love and trust. It fills you full of doubt, fills you full of fear, and turns you into chaos. Unlike the Murthig, which is a beneficial relationship to you, the Tempest Findal is nothing more than a relentless parasite that will lead to your doom. And this person is behind the gate? Of course not. This is simply a facsimile, a representation, but it should be real enough to help make my point. Go ahead. See what is there. He came in to have a look. The iron bars and the darkness behind it awaited. As he neared, a chalky white arm shot out to the elbow, its hand reaching and grasping in a crazed manner, trying to get at him. The greenish nails on its fingers were cracked and uneven. It rattled the bars as it struggled. The Shadowtech goddess pulled him away a step or two. The chalky hand lost some of its ferocity. It pulled back a bit and held the bars tentatively, then slowly reached out to him, palm up, fingers extended. See how its bearing changes? When it has fed off of your power long enough, it becomes sated for a short while. During that time, it can be charming, reasonable, sympathetic even. Sometimes it even forgets what it is and believes itself to be mortal, but always it will fall back into that ravenous, mindless state you saw before. The Tempest Findal has the strength of 20 men and can make you feel fear such as you have never known. Most troubling, it can make you feel sorry for it, make you serve its own ends. It tells lies, Lord Belmont, and you will believe them. You will believe every word it says, and then it will have you. Lies? Like the lies you're telling me right now? What lies? That you are the Shadowtech goddess. I don't believe you. She shrugged. Believe what you will, but believe this. The Tempest Findal will be the ruin of you if you let it. How so? The Shadowtech goddess pointed to a patch of dead growth near the bars. Look there. Stenstrom cleared the withered growth. Toppled over and covered in old runs of poison ivy was the statue of a man wearing what looked like a fleet uniform. The statue's head had come away from his body, looking up, shedding tears of bird droppings. He took a long look at the face. "Captain Duvall?" he said, astonished. "Indeed, here he is, Captain Duvall, Lord of Wilshire, wasted and cast aside. A recent victim of the Tempest Findal. Captain Duvall was a Kadar Gamain as well. He was favored. He had power granted to him by the universe. His Murthig granted him extraordinary power over the Hall of Mirrors. He could call it to him whenever he wished, and walk its halls in relative safety. And then, all of that came to an end. The Tempest Findal got him. It killed his Murthig. It pursued him across the realms, then wormed its way into his confidence, gained his trust and his reliance, all the while gorging on him. It gorged itself so much, he faded from one realm of existence entirely. It killed him? It did worse than merely kill him. He simply no longer exists in one plane. No longer a Kadar Gamain, he became a Kadar Golgol, or the one who is almost everywhere. And there is nothing worse than that. He became a powerless afterthought, and also ran. The universe abandoned him. The Hall of Mirrors abandoned him. And he didn't even have the Tempus Findal anymore, for it abandoned him too. All he has to look forward now is oblivion. He is looking for the Shadow Tech Goddess. He says he loves her. Does he really? My, that is flattering. Unfortunately, I will not see a Kadar Golgol. He may search for me all he wishes, but he'll find nothing but an empty chair. The man is insane, Stenstrom said. Is he? He was a great man once. Now look at him, an oddity in the Shadow Tech Goddess's garden. And now you say this planar entity, this Tempest Findal, is after me? Oh yes. And you will never be rid of it. It will kill and lie and do what needs to be done until you belong to it. And when it has you, it will drink deep until you are a Kadar Golgol too. He felt a fist of raw fear come blasting out of the bars, twisting him into a knot, ready to bring him to his knees. You feel that? That is the fear it can create. Overwhelming, isn't it? He struggled to speak. I've felt this before. I imagine you have. See, it wasn't me. Your time is nearly done, the Shadow Tech Goddess said. You are being pulled back into your body. Soon you'll be back aboard your ship, all shined up in ship shape. I have something I wish to give you first. She pulled a wooden box from a nearby pool and then held it out. I would like to give you what is in this box. I want to help you protect yourself from this relentless creature. That's why I presented myself to you. To help me? Indeed. Whether you believe I am the Shadow Tech Goddess or not is irrelevant. She opened the box. Inside was a bolabung made of black, shiny material. He picked it up. Shadow Tech. This bolabung will shield you from the fear the Tempus Findal creates. Wear it and be protected. A second item in the box was a stone dagger made from blackened sandstone and sharpened to a razor point. The handle was made from hammered silver and gold. What's this? This stone knife is made of material taken from the site of the Tempus Findal's mortality. This dagger is lethal to it. So you want me to kill it? Do what you will. I am simply offering... Oops, redo that. Take two. I'm simply offering you the tools to protect yourself. She glanced at Duvall's toppled statue. I truly don't wish to see you join Captain Duvall in my garden. He took the bolabungs and the knife and made them vanish. Why are you offering me these things? You must want something. He felt himself being pulled back away from the Shadow Tech Goddess and her garden of horrors. I want you in my debt. That's what I want. Tara, he's back. Gwen was sitting over him, holding his hand. Tara's little face barged in, her sideburns dangling. Hey, welcome back, Belle. You had us worried. He tried to sit up, but Gwen and Tara held him down. Not so fast. Just relax. Where am I? He asked. Dispensary, Gwen answered. You came down with a sudden and rather severe case of gift valve. I don't have gifts of the mind. My mother's Tyrol heritage suppressed it. How could I get gift valve? Gwen reached over and picked up a report. The Hospitalers detected a fair amount of caduspar in your system. Caduspar can easily make your system susceptible to the rigors of stellar Mach. He puzzled over that. How did caduspar get in my system? I'm thinking it happened on planetfall when that annoying little man tried to get himself on the ship. I did some checking in our shipboard archives, which is up to date from the time we shipped out of Planetfall. Ottoman John, Associate Professor E. Compressor, University of Arden, is actually, through various subtle connections, affiliated with none other than Hannah Ben Sherlamp. In other words, you were poisoned, Belle, Tara added. I guess Professor Sherlamp's playing for keeps. We'll deal with her when we return to Cana. How long was I out? 2 days, Tara said. We postponed our SM to give you and some of the others suffering from gift valve time to recover. We've already got the next one calculated in 26 hours. What about the ship? If Professor Sherlamp could get to us in Planetfall, she could have sabotaged the ship or rigged it. We've been all over the ship while you were sleeping it off. No rigs, no sabotage, Tara said. If there's one thing the Molly's good at, it's sniffing out rigs. I had a vivid dream. I dreamt I was walking with the Shadow Tech Goddess. Gwendolyn adjusted his sheets in a loving manner. You did? Tell me. She was wearing a costume and a helmet. I don't think it was her, though. I think she was lying. Gwen gently probed in with her mind. Sounds like a fascinating dream. You'll have to allow me to see later. Tara, when can Belle be released? Anytime. I need to get back to the bridge, he protested. No, Gwen said. You still need rest. We're on fast approach to Ing. You come back to our quarters and continue your recovery. I'll take good care of you. Part of his dream came back to him. Gwendolyn, a Murthig, symbiotic relationship. Gwendolyn took him back to his quarters and tucked him in. She had a few duties in engineering to perform, but promised to be back as soon as she completed them, to bring dinner from the mess. While she was gone, he rose, troubled. He fetched his HRN. He wondered if what he had seen was simply a delusion, or if he had actually walked in the presence of a person claiming to be the Shadow Tech Goddess. He wondered if the horrors she had warned him of were real. The Tempest Findal. Is that what I saw at Sarfortnum College in the amphitheater? He searched the vast interior of his HRN, typically full of arcane bric-a-brac. There he found 2 unfamiliar lumps in the pockets, a bolabung of black shadow tech on a leather cord, and an ominous knife with a blackened stone blade. And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 11, The Garden of Horrors. We also conclude Part 2. So, a lot of info in that chapter. Sometimes you can't help it. You have to give some exposition. And you try to, as an author, try to dress them up as interesting a package as you can. So that was my whole task with this Garden of Horrors. I once read a story about a satanic garden, this garden of devil worshippers. In the middle of this mansion, there was this garden, like in a courtyard. It was full of beautiful but poisonous plants. And if you fish through the plants, you would see like evil statues of Satan and demons and whatnot. And I always liked that imagery, so I tried to recreate it a bit here with this Garden of Horrors with these statues hidden in the foliage. We learned a lot about extraplanar entities, and these are various beings that are involved with the mechanics of the universe. Think of the universe like a cruise ship. You have a big ship moving through the water, and you have, by far, mostly passengers, people along for the ride. But you also have a few crew that pilot the ship, command the ship, take care of its various functions, and so forth. And you can think of EPEs, extraplanar entities, as the crew, as the people in charge of helping the universe run. There's all kinds. There's all kinds of EPEs. The Shadow Tech Goddess tells Belle that he is a Kadar Gemain, who is the one who is everywhere, and he exists in one form or another in every single universe that is available. So essentially there are an infinite number of him floating around in the universe, and not all of them are men, as we see in the Stenabel book. That Stenabel is another version of Paymaster Stenstrom, but she's a girl and has different abilities and has a different life story than he has. There's some that are aliens and some that are like rock or immaterial, or some where he's just like a force of nature. It just depends. And the Kadar Gamein is sort of like an antibody, or maybe a member of the security staff on a cruise ship. It's his job to protect the universe from deleterious entities that would cause it harm. Various entities are drawn to him, and that's the reason. It's so that if there's a hazardous being that has crossed over, the anatometer failed in its job and somebody crossed from one universe into the other, and it's a demon of some sort and it's causing havoc, the Kadar Gamein is supposed to take care of this creature, rub them out, so to speak. And then we talk about the Murthig, and Lady Gwendolyn is a Murthig. And if you recall from Aram's disc, there was 4 instances of Gwendolyn on that disc, and everyone else was just once. And that is her status as a Murthig, where she is in a Murthig, and the Chimeran word means soulmate, basically. And she is at his side most often, and she derives a fair amount of power from this connection. Her telepathy is very vast, and it's because of her Murthig connection to Paymaster Stenstrom. In the book Stenabel, Gwen didn't have telepathy, but she had incredible sight. And that's usually something only the Vith have, and Gwendolyn is a Xenon, but she has amazing sight in the Stenabel book. She can do a lot of different things. It's a symbiotic relationship. She derives power from him, and he derives power from her in subtle ways. He's sort of like a motorboat that is tuned to peak efficiency when she's around, but runs very poorly when she's not. And we notice that in the Cat book, where Cat is yet another type of extraplanar entity called a Covis, a sort of one-shot, a one-timer. And a Covis can replace the Murthig if the Murthig gets killed, like what happened in Cat, where the demon in blue lights killed Lady Gwendolyn specifically to take out the Murthig, and then Cat was determined to be a suitable Covis replacement. We learn about the Kadar Gogol, Captain Duvall, where he was a Kadar Gamein, but faded out of existence in one realm and became a Kadar Gogol. Went from being very powerful to powerless. He went from being to something to be admired to something to be pitied. And he lost his abilities to summon the Hall of Mirrors, yada, yada, yada. And we also found out what caused him to lose his status. It was the Tempus Findal, a creature that's sort of the opposite of the Kadar Gamein, the one who is everywhere. The Tempest Fendal is the one and only. There is one Tempest Findal throughout the universes. There's an event known as a Findel March. There's some sort of event that happens throughout the universes, and the Tempest Findal is killed in all instances during this Findel Mach, except for one who survives but is now alone in the multiverse, and it feels that weight upon them. It is essentially immortal. It's sort of like my version of a vampire. It's something that's lustful and greedy and selfish, and it seeks the power of the Kadar Gamein. There are lots of Kadar Gameins, so it's not just Stenstrom by himself. There are quite a few roaming around. It can detect these people from wherever they are, and even if they're in a different universe, it knows of their presence and struggles to get to them. It's very sort of like a juggernaut. It's hard to stop it. Once it locks on to one, it can walk the planes. It can go through the Hall of Mirrors at will, and it will attempt to force itself into the lives of these Kadar Gameins, ingratiate itself, make it indispensable in that person's life. It will kill other people who get in its way. The Murthig is the one that it hates the most, and it will kill the Murthig, and it will suck the Kadar Gamein dry like a spider. And it's also capable of feeling great remorse for the things that it's done once it's sated, and it becomes reflective and remorseful. Like, could I have actually done these things. And sometimes Tempest Findal will create charms and tokens that will thwart it when it's in its more ravenous states, where there's certain salves and potions that it comes up with that will drive the Tempest Findal away or keep it at bay. And it'll do these things because they generally feel guilty about the things that they've done. But then it wakes back up, and sometimes it'll go to sleep and forget what it is for a long time. Forget it's immortal. Forget it's the Tempest Findal and think it's just a normal person. But always it hears that voice, feels that call, goes back into its old ways again, and will begin the hunt afresh. And among their more potent powers is the ability to create indescribable fear. So it seems like the thing that attacked Stenstrom in Clovis and in the amphitheater at Sarfortnum College was the Tempus Findal trying to get ever closer to Paymaster Stenstrom. Well, we'll see if it's successful or not. Next chapter is part 3, or chapter 1 of part 3, and here's the reveal for the title of part 3 is Ing, of all things. Sounds good to me. And chapter 1 in part 3 is also called Ing. So looks like we arrive at far-flung Ing at long last. So I'm pumped, I'm stoked. We'll see what shakes loose in these next chapters. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I'm your host, Ren. Peace out.